Hi guys, welcome to my first YouTube video. I know my short format TikToks and stuff get quite a bit of reach and everyone always asks me to make YouTube videos, so I'll give it a go. This is my JZX100 chaser. I picked this up, had a blown engine, the paint was ruined and it was just not very good. So in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how I did a quick respray, cheap, easy, and with materials you can just buy at your local store. Everything for this build was supplied by VG Auto Paint, so huge shout out to them. And let's get into it. Okay, so let's just go through a couple of quick questions, quick common ones that people ask on respraying a car. Now it's a very daunting task doing a full respray just because most people charge between $5,000 and $10,000. And the biggest one that people ask is how do I prep the existing surface for paint? In terms of sanding, it's super easy. All I'm using is an orbital sander. I've got an air sander, but you can also use an electric sander. And I'm just using 600 grit. Any repairs, I usually go down a bit finer and work my way up. So for example, a repair that needs to go down to 80 grit to get it flat, I'll then go 120, 240, 320, and then up to 600. And then you just finish with 600 and it's ready to paint. So you can also finish with 400 if you're using 2-pack. So I'm doing base coat and clear coat. So all you do is you want to work your way around the whole panel and you don't want to go too hard on the edges and go down to bare metal. So you work your way around the whole panel and leave the edges and you'll come back and do those by hand.
Some areas where there were repairs. In this case, I filled the boot holes. I've just put some primer on and you can actually see, if you catch it in the light, that I haven't done a good enough job of sanding this. So if you look closely, you can see some sanding scratches. So that means these areas aren't sanded enough. So what I'm gonna do is go back to 320 and I'll just sand them again and then 600 and we'll see how it looks. So I finished sanding the whole car. Now the one thing I did want to mention is as you're sanding, you just want to make sure that you keep changing discs. Don't use one disc to sand half the car. So generally, as a rule of thumb, I try to use one disc per panel. For big panels, I usually use 2 discs, or if the disc is still fine, you can carry it over to half the next panel. But you'll notice that as you start going, the disc is less and less useful, like it's not taking off material like it was. So when you get to that point, you just change discs up on the concrete, and just as I work my way in the car, I'll just swap them over. So now that everything's sanded, for the next step, we've prepared these once again. What you want to do is, we've got some hot water here in a bucket, and I'm using red Scotch-Brite as well as some scuff stuff. Now basically that's surface prep. So anywhere that you've missed sanding, this will prepare it for paint. So what I do is just mix a bit in the hot water and then mix it up with the Scotch-Brite and just start getting in all the trims, under your door handles, under the guards, everything like that, in the tail light pockets, under the car, behind the guards. So I just reach in everywhere I can and then we hose it down, or wipe it down if you can't hose it down because inside of the car would get wet. Now you can get away without doing this step, however this does 2 things. One, it lets you sand in all the tight crevices, and the second thing it does is it cleans everything. So when you're done with this step, every bit that you've hit, you're guaranteed that it's clean, because the scuff stuff not only works as sanding paste, it works as a soap and a lubricant.
All these edges, these high points, that's where you're going to sand through and go through to your bare metal. Anywhere where you go through to bare metal, you just touch up with some primer. Now what you can do is spray it out of a gun so you can prime the whole car. But in this case, like I said, the previous paint was pretty good and it's just a drift car, so I sprayed over the existing paint. So anywhere where I rubbed through, I did spray with some rattle can primer just to make sure I have a good bond to the base metal, and then you just scuff that back and it's ready to paint. There were some repairs, so there were some little door dings and stuff that I pulled out and then did a skim coat of filler. So anywhere where you've put body filler, you also just want to hit it with some primer. Now what I did is I sprayed primer wet on wet in those areas. So wet on wet is a technique more than it is a product. Some Americans will call it a sealer. Now in an ideal world, you would seal the whole car with your wet on wet primer, but I didn't have a lot, and like I said, just a drift car. So any areas where I had a repair, so I know there was a repair somewhere here. Right before I sprayed my base coat, I just took some wet on wet primer in the gun, thinned it out so it was nice and wet. Just sprayed that area with the primer, let that flush off for 20 minutes, came back with my base coat and coated the whole car. So now we're at the stage of masking the car. Now, around here, what most people do is they'll just take some masking tape and they'll mask on the edge and then they'll paint it.
Problem with that is either some of the tape is going to be on the paint, and then when you take it off, there'll be a line of white showing, and which isn't a major issue if you're painting it white, but we're changing the color, so that's not going to work. And if you paint it too close on the other edge, you'll paint on the trim, and then over time, when the trim shrinks or whatever, the paint will crack, and the white will show, and it'll start peeling away. So the solution to this is to paint under the trim. So you've got two ways to do that. Either you can remove the glass, or you can use this stuff. Now, there's heaps of different brands. There's 3M, 4CR, I think it's called. I've got J tape here, and I've also got some of the 3M stuff. So basically all this is, look up close. It's just masking tape, but it's also got a hard plastic edge. So that sort of lets you put it underneath the trim and fold it back. So this is easier to work with in small sections, so you don't just want to take like a massive roll. So all you do is you take your trim tape and you start at an edge that's already folded. Sort of hold it back and stick it down. So when you've got your trim tape on, you can see that it's very hard to get on camera, but basically it's folded that trim up, and now we can paint underneath it. So I've got the car all ready to go, started masking it, you know, just about ready to put it in a paint booth. But you may be wondering, where are you going to paint this? There's no paint booth here, you know, what am I going to do? Let me show you something very cool. Okay, so after a long battle, this is what we ended up with. An inflatable booth, it's all pumped up. Now this is not an inflatable booth you can just buy. I sort of got this one custom made, you know, just to suit my space and what I'm going to do with it. So I'll go in there and I'll run you guys through it. Now excuse the noise, and I also don't have enough blower. I need a bigger blower to hold the thing up because it's kind of like sad. But then in here we've got two intake blowers which accept the filter as well. So those sort of create the cross draft, and they allow the overspray to go out the exhaust ports. And then there's one blower holding it up, and that's it. Pretty simple. I got it in white so that it lets the most light through, and look, it's not the best thing in terms of light, but it should do the job. The next common one is, what spray gun do I use? There's so many different types, and I'm just confused. So if you don't have a very big air compressor, all you'll get away with is a mini gun. So this is just a touch-up gun or a mini spray gun. They have a few different names, but basically just a small spray gun. These don't take a lot of air, so they work with any compressor, but the con from these is they only have a small spray fan. So it takes longer to spray your panels, and you generally have to do crossing passes or more passes to get a good job. Otherwise it'll leave stripes in the paint. So not ideal, but you can make it work. Now this is another type of gun you have. This is a pressure pot gun. I use this for my primers, so this has a very big tip. This one's got a 1.8 or a 2 mil tip. It's very good for spraying the thicker things, your high build primers for filling in sanding scratches and things like that. And then last of all, you've got your gravity feed gun. So this is the gun that I use for pretty much all the painting I do. It's a DeVilbiss DV1, and it's got a 1.3 mil tip. So it's good for your base coat and your clear coat. However, professional painters usually have a separate gun for base and then a 1.2 mil for clear. But I just do everything with this and it works really well. If you're on a bit of a budget, you can also get a more budget-oriented gravity-fed gun. This is just a cheap star gun. This is what I learned to paint on. If you're just starting out, there's no point going and spending $900, $1,000 on a spray gun. Just get something cheap that has good reviews and just get the hang of spraying. And then if you find it's something you're interested in and you want to continue with, definitely go for a higher end gun and you'll get those better finishes. And this is everything we've got here to spray today. So I've got a respirator. Now this is an air-fed respirator. You can use just one with filters. But our spray gun, we're using the DeVilbiss DV1 today. Now I've got my mixing cups. So that's for base and clear, and then that is for my primer. Then I've just got some thinners in a bottle, that's for emergency. A primer, so it's just the Concept 2K primer. We'll be spraying this wet on wet, so I'll be thinning it down more than you need. Base coat, so today we're mixing Porsche 39G Viola Metallic. And we've got our clear coat, which is just the AV line 2K high solid clear coat. So it's a HS clear, goes on a bit thicker. Okay, so the car is all masked up the windscreen, the sides, and the rear window. We've just got some scrap wheels on the side, so don't really need to worry about masking those up. If you really care about your car, then you probably should. Now what you're going to do is use some wax and grease remover and a towel. I like to use a microfiber because it picks up all the loose little items. So just use that and go around the car and give it a quick clean. Gone over it a few times with wax and grease remover. And now we're laying our first coat of base. The first layer of base coat you lay on fairly dry. You just want to get paint on the surface to give the rest of your paint something nice to adhere to, but you don't want to go too dry to where it's patchy. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I've just got a piece of scrap vinyl in the vinyl cutter, and I'm just cutting out a stencil of what I want the roof to look like. So I'll show you guys on the car in a minute. What I've done here is I've taken the clear and I've just used the same mixing stick as the purple to give it a candy effect, and then I've mixed some purple and silver flakes into it. I'm just trying things. This isn't something that's really recommended or you should do, but you know, we'll see how it looks. So I've just laid one coat of clear on the roof. So I've done 3 coats of clear on the rest of the car, just in case I need to wet sand and buff it down the line, I can do that. So the camera totally fell off as I was spraying the clear coat, so I didn't get a shot of the last coat. But one thing to add is when you're spraying, there's no real perfect distance or perfect spray pattern or anything like that. The way I do is I sort of hold the gun about this far from the panel when I'm spraying my clear, and I'll usually do about a 70% overlap to get it nice and wet. However, your mileage may vary depending on the temperature, you know, the pressure you're spraying at and things like that. So sort of just do a pass, see how it looks, and then adjust from there. I usually do my adjustment on the bottom because you don't really notice if those panels are a little bit more orange peely, and then work your way up and you'll get a nice finish towards the end. Okay, so the car is all painted now. You can see that nice pearl coming through in the sun. And you know, everything's come out pretty good. Needs a quick polish to get rid of some of the dirt, but you know, our little stencil design on the roof came out real nice. So yeah, what's left now? So you may be wondering why I sprayed just the car and I didn't spray the bumper or the side skirts or anything like that. Main reason for that is when you're in the booth, there is just so much to think about. You know, I'm not an experienced painter, so you know, I'm always thinking about what I'm doing. So just less things to paint at once, you know, less problems. So I usually when I'm painting a car, I'll just paint the car on its own, and then I'll do the extra pieces at the end. So I've still got to spray the mirrors, the front bar, the side skirts, and the rear lip and the spoiler. So I'll do those today, and we'll put it all together tomorrow. Alright, so this video is already much longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm going to stop it there. But I'll drop another one in a few days, and that'll just show you how to polish the little bits of dust out, and I'll show you how to reassemble the car after your paint job. There's a few little things I didn't go over in this video that are just self-explanatory, so like masking the keyholes, you just get a bit of tape and mask the keyholes. But yeah, thanks for watching my first video, and I hope it does okay, and I'll make some more in the future. Thanks guys.